What is up, guys? Coop here with another character build. Today we're going to be doing a one from a user who actually asked me to do a cleric build. He said, please could you do a cleric build? This build would be Necromancy and Hydro skills, Warfare and Hydro for attributes and skill points, very good against the undead. So I kind of went into this character, I was like, okay, how do I want to build this cleric? See, clerics typically can kind of be separated into two separate sections. You have your tank, and then you have your support. So I really try to go into this character of like, what type of mentality would I want to build? Well, one, he wanted this to be very good against the undead. One of the things that undead characters typically have is they have the Decaying perk, which means that they can take damage from healing. So I went in and I was like, okay, so this cleric's going to have heals. I also looked into this character of like, okay, I need this character to be kind of tanky and deal with some of the things out there and be, basically I want them to have a solution to all the different problems around them. So I chose Beast because basically he has a nice little thing of right here of the sturdy, where it gives him a little bit more life and dodge. The sneaking doesn't really matter that much, and then he also has these really good spells if we do decide to have some magical based abilities or a magical based character. So if we're in a comp of 4 and you have some mages, we can use these abilities to really help us out. However, if we're doing say a lone wolf character, depending on who we partner up with, it will depend on how good they are. Now, all the races are actually pretty good for this. Like Lose is really good because she can do sort of her encourage ability. However, we really don't use the crit or anything out there. Another one is Fane. Fane is good because he can do the play dead, but he is an undead character, so a lot of the sort of heals would be kind of useless and negated from that. Now, also, you can go, if I go over here, Ifon, it's basically the same as Lose. Sybil. Sybil's really good because she has Corpse Eater, which allows us to get those really easy early on perks. Also gives us another way of healing, and on top of it gives us damage and extra actions, action points if we need it. And then one of my other favorite ones is Red Prince. Red Prince is actually a really good one because he adds a little bit more resistance and he does give us a Dragon Fire attack. However, I just chose Beast because, I don't know, a Dwarf Paladin always kind of fit the bill for me. I mean, just look at that. That just looks like a cleric to me. So, we chose that for right now. Now, going into it, choosing your attributes. Attributes are kind of a little complicated for, I would say, a cleric. Because, basically, you want yourself to wear a plate, but you're using intelligence mainly, but you're also having a shield. So, it kind of makes it a little bit to where your points are all over the board. But that's okay. You are meant to be the supporting character. You're meant to be not so much a powerhouse like a two-hand necromancy build, but you're meant to be sort of the answer to all. You are the toolkit master, but you can be really good against the undead as well. So with strength, I chose strength basically to increase our stats of a little bit of our melee, which isn't kind of moot point. We don't really use it that much, but the point of the strength and why we choose strength is mainly for the plate armor. The plate armor will give us a lot of physical armor, which will allow us to wear that and have our physical armor set. So that's also really nice as well. Next is intelligence. Intelligence is what scales most of our abilities. It helps scale some of our heals later on. It helps scale a lot of our necromancy abilities because necromancy will do a lot more damage that way. And it just basically increases all the main stats and main things that we need. So intelligence is our most important stat, especially going forward. I would dare say with strength, just get enough to where you can wear the plate armor and then use intelligence for the rest of the stuff. Constitution is also important because it's a good secondary skill because it increases our life, and 2, allows us to hold shields. Shields usually require a little bit of constitution, so similar to strength, you put enough points to get those things on there, and then you just boost up your intelligence. So, why did I choose the shield, and why did I choose the plate armor? We basically now have high physical armor. We are able to take a lot of damage and not take a lot of those harmful effects such as things like stuns from magical armor and also some of the things like knockbacks from physical armor. So obviously magical armor is not going to be that high, but I have ways of getting around that. And let's actually dive into that as well. So choosing our skills, we have good old Hydro. So going off of what the guy suggested over there, we have Hydro because it allows us to deal more damage with our water-based spells, which is okay. And also we have Vitality, which basically increases the amount of how much we heal. So, you know, healing is obviously very important for a cleric. Also, because undead have that decaying perk sometimes, you can actually heal with the character and then it actually deals damage. So, really awesome there. Next is the 5% of magical armor from skills and potions. So that will give us that magical armor that we need. So now we have high physical and high magical, making us able to deal with all the things that we come into play with. Mages are nothing, and now physical is nothing. Next is Necromancy. It increases the healing dealt, or healing based off the damage dealt. So that's going to be awesome because of some of our Necromancy skills are some of them give you heals already, so you get a lot more healing out of that. Also, it's going to be partnered up really well with the Living Armor talent, which I will show you guys later on. Also, one of the things that's important with Necromancy is it gives us a lot of utility in our toolkit to deal with things like undead, or to deal with other types of characters to make it to where we're still viable even if they're humanoid. So that's awesome there. Now for your civil abilities, you can choose really anything out there. I usually do Persuasion if it's a main character. However, in the beginning, usually Locksmith or Lucky Charm does really good. They actually boosted up Lucky Charm a good amount I think a few updates back, so Lucky Charm's actually not that bad. Also, one of the things that's cool about Lucky Charm now is it doesn't have to be your character that opens up the boxes anymore. The whole group gets it if you have Lucky Charm. So that's something to keep in mind when going forward. Now for the skills, I basically had, all these variety of different skills. Rain didn't make really much sense, and Hail Strike, while it's a good ability, it didn't really fit the theme of the character. So I really tried to not min-max all the time, but I also try to get into the roleplay aspects of how a character would work, while also trying to make them as mostly viable as possible. Now one of the things I chose was obviously Armor of Frost. Armor of Frost is an amazing ability. It's one action point, it gives you magical armor, and it helps cure if you're burning, poisoned, stunned, frozen, suffocating, petrified. It's amazing for that. So, how does that exactly work? Well, obviously, you can add some more magical armor to you. So now we have, living armor, which I'll show you guys later on. And then we also have, our shield, which gives us magical armor. And then we have this that gives us magical armor. So we have a lot of magical armor and a lot of physical armor. So we are really good at negating those effects. But also, if you're in a team, say, your dumb rogue got out of stealth and accidentally got themselves petrified, you just drop this on them, and then boom, you can still make them able to do combat and not be petrified. It removes that effect if they are stunned and everything else. Now, let's also say that, for example, your warrior goes in and there's a bunch of mages there. You want him to have that magical armor, you drop that on him, and then you're good to go. So you can either use it and be selfish and put it on yourself to make yourself just an uber tank and able to negate any of the effects in any of the situations around you, or you can add it on your team members when they get into a hairy situation, or when there is something that is against sort of what their character is not strong against. Now next is obviously heal. I mean, go figure. A cleric has to have a heal. Also, it helps out when you're facing undead characters that have the decaying perk, so you deal damage from healing. A lot of people forget about that, but undead characters, when they have the decaying status effect, when you heal them, they actually take damage. Now, what happens if the target you have doesn't have that? Well, let's give them Decaying Touch. It deals physical damage, so if you have a physical character who's already destroying their armor, and you put this on there as well, they now take physical damage from healing skills. Keep in mind, though, it is resistant to physical armor, so you will have to break that physical armor in order to do that ability. So, make sure that you're partnered up with a good physical character, so such as a two-hand Necromancy build was also really good. I know I'm kind of a sucker for that. So, that's where we have our strength, where we could probably help out by attacking a little bit to break down that armor, and then maybe having one of your allies help break it down. Then you put Decaying Touch on them, and then you pop a good old heal. So one of the things that you guys got to keep in mind too is that these aren't that many action points. It's only 1, 1, and 2. So that way it allows you to be able to use your movement and also to be able to attack. So it allows you to do a lot of really cool things out there. Now the talent I chose is good old Living Armor, which I guess it reset, but if I actually pick that, boop. So Living Armor is awesome because all healing you receive from skills and consumables, keep that in mind for potions, goes to your magic armor. So it makes it to where you really have that magical armor. So that allows you to not have to put your Armor of Frost constantly on yourself. You can worry about putting that on your teammates rather than you having to worry about that, because you could just heal yourself with your potion and put it right to your magical armor. Now there are some other good perks along the way. I'm always a sucker for Lone Wolf because it allows me to get the best out of my build. but Comeback Kid's always a pretty good one. Just because it brings you back, and you know, you don't have to worry about you losing your rotation in sort of the turns. Another one is Far Out Man, which allows us just to get those long heals that we need. And of course, there's a lot of other ones out there like Leech, which is also good because it allows us a bunch of healing and things out there. Opportunist is also good because we have Necromancy. One of the things that you guys got to keep in mind is with Necromancy, every time you deal damage, you do heal for a tiny bit, so Opportunist is pretty good for that. So anyways, let's go through Fort Joy, and let's see what I pick up along the way. Alrighty, so we have officially gotten out of Fort Joy. So this is right after you pretty much escape, and after I did pretty much all the leveling up and all the things that you could possibly do. Usually around this time, you want to be about level 5, unless you miss something. So a lot of things have changed since we first originally started. We originally just put our stats into Intelligence, Strength, and Constitution, and we just had a point in Restoration, Decaying Touch, and Armor of Frost. So one of the things I definitely was trying to figure out is how exactly to build this character. I was trying to figure out if I wanted to make him more of a tank and a support. Like, how did I exactly want to build him? Well, I definitely found him to be a lot more of a survivability character with a lot of tools in his toolkit. And that was definitely something that I discovered while trying to build this character. The first thing that I did was every time I leveled up, I put a point into Intelligence. So basically you get 2 attribute points usually with every single level. So what I did was I would put 1 point in Intelligence, put it into Strength, 1 point of Intelligence, put it into Constitution. And I kept kind of bouncing between the two Strength and Constitution, with always putting a point into Intelligence, because most of our skills actually scale with Intelligence. So that was definitely something I wanted to do, especially going forward. Now, I did make this character a lone wolf character. That's just the way I build my characters. I really like lone wolf. I think it really gets into the build philosophy a lot quicker. However, if you do have a party of 4 or 3 or whatnot, anything bigger than 2, I would suggest that you maybe pick up Elemental Affinity along the way, and then you can use the Rain of Blood ability, which you can actually get this ability, if I just kind of scroll on over here. You can actually get this ability right over here in this desk. And you might be wondering where this desk is. It's right over here. You can take this ladder with the teleportating gloves that you get from killing those crocodiles, and you can grab it right here. You just require 1 point into Hydro and 1 point into Necro. The great thing with Elemental Affinity and having that is it allows your Necromancy skills to cost 1 point less, allowing you a lot more actions to be able to actually do your attacks. So that's something that you can keep in mind. Another thing that I'm probably going to be picking up along the way is Opportunist, because this allows me to attack them when they walk by me, allowing my Necro abilities to proc so I can attack them and get healed for the damage. So there's a lot of other good abilities along the way we could pick up as well, but we'll discover those as we kind of go on. So that's basically how I did my attributes. I put 1 point into Intelligence, and then 1 point into Strength, 1 point into Constitution. Basically, the general gist is you want you to have just enough to where you can equip some of this armor, like for example 11 in Strength, so that's pretty awesome. And then you also want to have at least 11 in Constitution, because later on we're going to be picking up some better shields and things. So just make sure that you always hit the minimum, especially going forward, and always put 1 point into Intelligence, because everything kind of scales off of Intelligence. Now for my combat abilities, I did put 2 points into Hydro and another, I had 1 point in Hydro and I put another point into it and another point into Necro. So basically I wanted to heal up a little bit more with my abilities and get access to some of those cooler abilities in Necromancy, which we'll kind of get into. And also I wanted to increase the healing I did with my Hydro. So one of the things you guys got to keep in mind is Restoration is healing for a flat amount. It doesn't scale with Intelligence. So you have to put points into Hydro to increase some of your heals. Now there are certain heals out there that will increase with Intelligence. We just haven't gotten any yet because those happen a little bit later in Hydro. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So I definitely wanted to make it to where my heals were still powerful. Now also keep in mind the heals are not just to heal exactly. When we do face undead characters, this will do some massive damage. Now one of the things you guys got to keep in mind is if you're ever debating on something, for example, like when I'm fighting Niles, which she's one of the bosses you face in Fort Joy in the basement, you see these meat golems. And for a while there, I wasn't sure if they were undead or not. A nice little handy trick to find out what sort of attributes a character has is by hitting the Examine button. By hitting the Examine button, you can see certain stuff like their status effects, immunities, talents, stats. A lot of people forget about this, and I think it's definitely something to check out in the future, because it will allow you to figure out a lot more about what you are facing up against, and knowing if they're undead characters or not. So that was definitely something I wanted to keep in mind. So I just put a point into each of these right here. Now eventually we're going to be putting some points into warfare, so that way we can get some more warfare based abilities and maybe pick up some of those nice stuns along the way. Because Battle Stomp and I believe Charge is also really good, because it allows us 2 different ways of knocking them down and taking down some of that physical armor, and also giving us access to being able to stun them, which one of the best things to do is knocking down people and stunning them because they aren't able to do their turn. Now another thing I did is I put 2 points into Retribution. The reason I put stuff into Retribution is, well, obviously we're a tanky motherfucker, so having that Retribution is really helpful. Now keep in mind that Retribution does not proc with good old Necromancy, so the amount that you reflect does not actually heal you. So it originally back in the day used to, but now it does not. But the reason I put it in there is because, well, we're really tanky, and we obviously with them hitting us, they take some damage, and then we can also do Opportunist to heal from that. We have so many different types of heals that constantly I found myself with extra life. That's why it's good to have still points in Constitution. You might be trying to go for the bare minimum strength and the bare minimum of Constitution, and you could try to deck out your intelligence. However, I think Constitution is really nice to have because we do a good amount of healing as well. So you need to make sure that you are able to not just die with characters hitting you. One of the things I definitely noticed is when I was getting attacked by 4 or 5 creatures, I would definitely be like at full life, and then I'd be down to like nothing, and then when it'd be my turn, I'd be back up to full life of some of my abilities. So just keep that in mind, that you want to have a little bit of Constitution so you don't overheal yourself, or you just don't die like, you know, a wet potato. Which I guess that's kind of a weird analogy. But going forward, I definitely would suggest that I put 2 points into Retribution, 1 point into Hydro, 1 point into Necro. Just really worked out really well. Now, eventually we're going to be putting some more points into Warfare, so that's definitely going to be something that we went into. Civil abilities, it really doesn't matter. However, in the beginning, I definitely suggest Lucky Charm and Bartering, as those are some of the better ones. Lucky Charm will definitely allow you to get some quick money really fast, and Bartering allows you to get, you know, sort of the spells and spell books that you want really easy. Persuasion isn't really used all that often. I think there's a total of 3... Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure there's only 3 persuasion checks compared to Act 2, where there's a lot more. So persuasion isn't all that important. Lore Master is a little bit important, or well, used to be really important. Lately there hasn't been many things that have been dropping with Lore Master, I've noticed, with the Divinity Edition. Maybe I just got unlucky. And Telekinesis is, well, kind of a useless stat. And Thievery is always nice though, as well, because it allows you to get through some stuff a lot faster. So, like I said, some of the talents we're probably going to be picking up is Opportunist, or getting Elemental Affinity, just because we have the Rain Blood. So, now the next thing we should probably look at is our actual skills that we have here. So we got a good amount of skills. We still have the original 3. The combo of Decaying Touch with Restoration is super good if they are not an undead character. One of the things that I did notice is, especially, well, with my physical damage and with partnering up with a melee-based character, I was able to destroy that armor super fast. So with Retribution, with my attacks, and with sort of my abilities already doing physical damage, I was able to destroy their physical armor like that. So that made it really easy for using Decaying Touch and Restoration. So, you know, you just use Decaying Touch on them, and then you would just use Restoration, and then they would be taking massive amounts of damage over time. Now, another one I did was Mosquito Swarm. I picked up this ability because it basically allowed me to be able to heal for the damage and just do more physical damage. Now, this is a ability that actually scales the damage based off of your intelligence, so that intelligence really comes into play when doing that. It allows us to get a bigger heal and to get a little bit more damage out there. So this is an alternative way of healing if you can't use your Restoration. Maybe you used your Restoration with Decaying Touch and you just need a quick heal. It's nice to have with that. Now keep in mind, all the times that we overheal for an amount, we also get magical armor due to living armor. Makes it super helpful when dealing with magical characters, especially magical undead. I gotta say, it definitely helped out when I was in the catacombs and I was battling against some of the jars and Withermore's jars. So a nice little section of that is pretty nice. Now, next one I got is Shackles of Pain. And Shackles of Pain is super awesome. Basically, it marks the target with Shackles of Pain, and anytime you take damage, they take damage. And the great part is you heal from that damage. So, basically, let's say the Red Prince is attacking us. He goes over, he attacks us. Not only does he get retribution damage, so he gets, if I go over here, since I'm a lone wolf character, he gets 20% of that damage reflected at him, so say he did 100. He now gets 20 damage reflected at him, and then he gets 100 damage reflected at him. So with this, the Shackles of Pain does 100 damage to him, and then I heal for 20 damage. Super duper nice. I heal for basically a good amount of my life, about, let's say, 5%. So that makes it super awesome, especially going forward. Actually, I'm sorry, that was 10%. Sorry, math is hard. But another thing that we have is Shields Up and our good old Armor of Frost. Basically, if we're dealing with a magical-based character, we're able to deal with them very well because of our magical armor. However, I don't use exactly Armor of Frost for the magical armor effect as often. I actually use it to get rid of the status effects. So, if I am, say, walking on fire, and my magical armor is destroyed, I usually put it on my character, or if I'm poisoned. And then if my character is stunned, or frozen, or petrified, say like one of my party members, I would just put that on them. Obviously, you aren't able to do it to yourself because you'll be stunned, but say Red Prince is, petrified, or stunned, or, just in general frozen. I can just put this on him and get rid of that effect. Super awesome, and then that way he can still do his turn rotation. So, something awesome to keep in mind. I chose Rain of Blood because eventually I'm going to be picking up Elemental Affinity. It's not an ability you really exactly need, but if you have anybody in your group that has Leech, or any undead characters that can do a quick contamination to allow them to be able to heal themselves, it's super effective. So, also we can do some Blessed Blood in the future and do a bunch of other cool stuff. So, getting the Blessing ability and adding Blessed Rain, that would allow us to walk and literally get healed while also just burning to death all the undead characters we get along the way. Petrifying Touch, we don't really use that all that often, but there is certain characters like the Meat Golems, for example, that just have life and no magical armor whatsoever. So it's nice to just be like, boom, you are taking damage. So, as you can see here, 15 to 17 damage, it would actually stun the Red Prince. So, just something to keep in mind when going forward. So, definitely looking at this character, I'm definitely going to be putting some points into Warfare and trying out some of the different talents along the way, but right now our builds are pretty good. Now, if you're looking for the Necromancy sort of person here, if I actually scroll over, you can actually find the Necromancy person right over here in this tent. So you kind of go right over here by the gate, and the Necromancy skill trainer is here. And then if you are looking to get your Hydro skills and maybe pick up some other Hydro skills along the way, say like you find something with memory, like some sort of gear with memory to allow you to get some extra, slots, you can actually find him just kind of walking around over here. He's like a blue lizard. So, anyways, I'm going to finish up Act 1 and start to get into Act 2 to show you guys some of the really cool stuff that I picked up along the way and kind of conclude the build. Alrighty guys, so we're getting to the conclusion of the build. We have just finished Act 1 and the build kind of repeats itself towards the end there. So a lot of things have actually changed, and pardon the naked dwarf, I just wanted to make sure I didn't have any extra stats or anything to affect sort of my display of what I did while leveling up the character, besides obviously leaving the weapons that don't really leave any sort of attribute or skill manipulation. So the first thing that I did is I've been pretty much following the routine of putting a point into intelligence and then a point into the other stuff. However, what I've noticed now is now that I have a lot more actual heals, which we'll get into a little bit more, I did lower down my constitution. I kind of bounce between strength and everything. You can actually put a few more points into constitution if you would like. I just did the 2 so that I had enough to get the shield requirement. Now, as time goes on, we're probably going to have to put some more points in. Keep in mind, this is without the Lone Wolf build in the mix. So, obviously, you want to have a few points into strength just because, you're obviously doing some melee damage. A lot of your spells are doing physical-based damage, and it's important that you're able to actually break down the damage. And partner that up with a melee character, you do a lot of good physical damage and can get through most of the obstacles that the game throws at you. Now, the intelligence is kind of important because obviously it still scales everything. I mean, it's kind of a repeat of what we said before. Now, the real thing is the combat abilities. The combat abilities is where the things kind of shine. So, I've only got 2 points in Retribution. I just found this to be a very helpful skill when taking down the armor of the characters. So, you know, having things like, for example, Shackle of Pain to bounce back the damage, and then having Retribution bounce back another portion of the damage really makes it to where the physical armor gets broken down really well, especially with having another melee character and us not having much melee damage. It really counteracts each other and works together to make a better sort of way of getting rid of physical armor. So by having Retribution and having Necro skills, and on top of it having our melee based character, we're able to destroy the physical armor. Makes sense. Just pretty much repeating off of what happened before. Now the next thing is I put a point into Huntsman. Huntsman is the one thing on here that will probably not make sense to a lot of you guys, and I understand why. But the thing that Huntsman does is it increases the damage while attacking from higher ground. Keep in mind, we do have a lot of abilities such as Mosquito Swarm and Decaying Touch that can actually reach from higher ground and actually do some good damage. So it's important that we actually have that skill. But that's not why we chose it. We chose it for the actual heal of First Aid. First Aid is a heal that does scale with the Hydro abilities. A lot of people forget that Vitality, when it's used to heal, a lot of people focus on just it being Hydro, but it actually scales up with the Huntsman as well. I know because I actually tested it myself, and I was actually relatively surprised because I kind of never figured that combination to actually work out, but it did. So it does increase the healing, so having all those points in Hydro is very helpful because it made us have another heal. So now we have Restoration and First Aid, and then eventually we'll be picking up Healing Ritual and other things from the Hydro tree. So basically what is important, especially when playing a Cleric, is having these healing spells. They are kind of what you use when battling against the undead. It's very much is important because of the decaying factor. And also, it just helps out when you're with your team and healing all your team members along the way. Now, the next thing is obviously I had 2 points in Necro. From this point on, I really think that after I put 1 point into Warfare, I'm going to put the rest of my points into Necromancy. I want my stuff to heal almost 100% of what I have. So after this, I'm going to basically just keep putting points into Necromancy and maybe Retribution. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably put 1 point into Warfare, and then I'll put another 2 points into Necromancy, and then 1 point into Retribution. And then from there on, I will just kind of pick and choose my stats as time goes on, but mainly focusing on Hydro to increase our healing-based spells. So, Retribution was a really good ability. It just helped me with kind of being more of a tanky character. You don't actually have to have Retribution if you don't want to. You can just put your points into Necromancy and Hydro instead and kind of split those points, but I just found it to be very helpful. So, I know that's kind of a lot of rambling and mumbling around, but it is important that when you do a kind of a character build, you kind of assess the situations and you kind of build based off of how things are going and understanding what your other teammates might be picking or what you're doing class build wise. Now, as for talents, I still kept Living Armor because Living Armor is amazing. I got Opportunist as well because obviously when people run by, we can get some quick heals and some quick damage to help us destroy that physical armor. And then from there, I've been kind of deciding, but I think Elemental Affinity is one of the best. Because with Elemental Affinity, you can do Raining Blood, and then you can do your Blessing spell, which if you actually go over here, your Blessing spell, which you'll get as you level up, you can use that to have Blessed Blood, so that way you have ways of healing a large amount of people around you, and also when you're standing in blood, all your Necro abilities will cost 1 less. And I don't believe it goes into being 0. So Shackles of Pain will still cost 1, Decaying Touch and Mosquito Swarm will cost 1. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Executioner, you don't really do a lot of final hits, so that's not really required. I know some people might be mentioning that in the comments. Glass Cannon is pretty good if you don't do Lone Wolf. Hothead is another one I would highly recommend, especially going forward. This one's a really good one because it allows you to have more memory slots to allow you to have more spells. And then if you decide to say get rid of all those points into Retribution and put it all into Warfare, you can do Picture of Life as well, or Picture of Health. Savage Sortilege, I try to make it work with the build. However, just with how the stats kind of go, you're already splitting your Constitution and Strength to do damage and to be able to hold shields and have heavier armor. So having Savage Sortilege didn't really work out for what I could do because you have to put points into wits and things. If you have a high amount of crit from your gear, though, you might be able to use it. However, I find it to be very insufficient. So, that's something to just keep in mind. Now, let's actually get into the spells that we chose here. Basically, there's not much of a real change here. The only thing that we might be picking up later on would be Healing Ritual, and maybe a few little small healing spells in the mix, but this is pretty much most of the spells that you're going to be using. We have our good old Restoration, which is just our heal, and First Aid, which is another heal that we have. So, I like it because they're both range heals. It helps out a lot. Decaying Touch, because it gives us an effect. Keep in mind that you do have to destroy the physical armor before you can give them the decaying thing. Now the next one is Mosquito Swarm. Mosquito Swarm says that it is resistant by the physical armor, but I do see that it does still heal, even though if they have physical armor, so we can test that over here. And we'll go over here. And as you can see, it does still heal us, even though that there was physical armor. So, that's something to keep in mind, especially going forward. Shackles of Pain, still one of our good spells. Keep in mind that they do have to have no physical armor, so that's where our Retribution, our damage, our Necro spells, everything comes into play. Also, I kept Raining Blood. Raining Blood's good because it allows everybody to get the bleeding effect if they don't have physical armor. So if we destroy their physical armor, we can give them all a bunch of bleed and basically have them slowly lose life as well. So that was really awesome. Armor Frost as well is super good ability. So that's pretty much the gist of it, though. I mean, there's really not much else you can really do with this build. I kind of showed you guys all the different things. Pick up Healing Ritual along the way from the Hydro, but other than that, that's pretty much all the things that this sort of build has to offer. Now, also, if you look at me with actually putting on all my stats here and actually putting in Lone Wolf, if I can find it, as you can see here, I look like a fucking beast. And one of the things that is important, though, that I see a lot of people make a mistake of, is make sure that when you hit 40 on your intelligence, you focus on your other stats of strength and constitution. So that's a nice little tip to take on, because you should be, if you're doing Lone Wolf, pretty much almost done. Anyways, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this build. I've been trying to level up through it and try to make my way and kind of discover a few things along the way. Obviously with Divinity Edition, my builds kind of are a little bit slower because I don't have the mods to just skip a lot of the content, or I don't have the characters that already have most of the gear and skills and skill books. So I have to kind of grind up and try to steal, like, legitimately the way to do it, or I'll just get the mod and maybe just skip ahead and be able to make these builds a little bit faster. I want to thank OrignialBlueTheLion for the comment. I do appreciate it, and I do like taking of your comments as well and trying to build builds out of it. This build was definitely very interesting, and I definitely had to think a lot when trying to build this build. I know that this video was a little bit longer than usual, but I do hope you guys sort of learn some different things while trying out this character. Anyways, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to subscribe. We are trying to build ourselves up to 2K. I'm very proud to see how this channel's been going, and I think we can reach that 2K by the end of October. I know we can do it. I know we can do it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching.